When you've been with someone for years, you start to believe you've mapped out the people in your corner. You think you know which friends belong to you, which ones belong to your partner, and which ones truly belong to both of you. Most of all, you think you know who would have your back if things ever went wrong. I learned the hard way that I was wrong. It all started about 2 years ago, when I was dating Matthew. Matthew was the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately owned it. He was magnetic. Always laughing, always telling stories, always commanding attention. He had this uncanny ability to make everyone lean in and listen. When we first met, I couldn't help but be swept up by it. His confidence, his energy, his larger-than-life presence. It all felt intoxicating. At first, it was flattering to be with someone who could light up a room. But over time, I began to notice that his charm often came at my expense. Whenever we were with friends and I told a story, Matthew would interrupt and twist it into something funny. But always at my cost. He'd embellish details, throw in an embarrassing tidbit I had never wanted shared, or mock my delivery so people would laugh at me, not with me. I told myself it was harmless, that this was just his sense of humor, but those little digs started piling up. Then came the undervaluing. I work in marketing, and I genuinely love what I do. I take pride in building campaigns, researching consumer behavior, and seeing a project come together. But to Matthew, it was all a joke. "Oh, so basically you just scroll Instagram all day," he'd say in front of our friends, smirking like it was the funniest line in the world. If I ever mentioned feeling stressed, he'd roll his eyes and say, "You wouldn't last a day in a real job." I tried to brush it off, but it stung. Eventually, I confided in a couple of my close friends in our group. I told them that the way he dismissed me was starting to get under my skin. They listened politely, but one of them shrugged and said, "Oh, that's just how he jokes. Don't be so sensitive." It hurt, but I swallowed it. I told myself maybe I was being too sensitive. Until one night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Matthew invited me to his company's annual party, a big fancy event for his tech firm. I was nervous about meeting his colleagues, so I spent hours getting ready. I bought a new dress, did my hair, and even practiced small talk in the mirror because I wanted to make a good impression. But the entire night, Matthew barely acknowledged me. When he did introduce me, it was never as his girlfriend by name, or with any detail about who I was. He would laugh and say, "This is the one who puts up with me." That's it. Not my name. Not my career. Nothing about me. Just the one who puts up with me. At one point, I stood next to him as he chatted with a group of his colleagues. I smiled, waiting for him to bring me into the conversation. He glanced at me once and then looked away, continuing like I wasn't even there. I finally excused myself to the bathroom, trying to hold back tears. Later that night, in the car, I confronted him. "Do you even realize how you made me feel tonight?" I asked. He sighed dramatically. "What are you talking about? You ignored me. You didn't even introduce me to people properly." And he laughed. He actually laughed. "You're being crazy. You just can't handle me getting attention from other people." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. When I told our friends about the fight, I thought at least one of them would understand. Instead, they doubled down on what he said. "You know how social he is. Maybe you're overthinking it. Honestly, you can be kind of dramatic sometimes." It was like déjà vu. The same dismissal, only this time it cut deeper because it came from people I trusted. Still, I stayed with him. For another 6 months. I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just what relationships were like after the honeymoon phase. But the truth was nothing changed. Every event, every gathering, I was an accessory. Not a partner. And every time I tried to talk about it, I was told I was making a big deal out of nothing. The breaking point came during a weekend trip with our friend group. We were sitting around a fire, sharing stories. I started telling a funny one from my childhood. Halfway through, Matthew interrupted. "Oh, you've told this one before," he said loudly. "Let me tell it better." And he did. He retold my story, exaggerated the details, and got everyone laughing. But the laughter wasn't about the story. It was about him. He had hijacked my memory, my voice, and made it his stage. I sat there in silence, humiliated. And what stung the most wasn't just that he did it. It was that not one person in that circle spoke up for me. Not one friend said, "Let her finish," or "Hey, that was her story." That's when I realized I could never win in this group. They weren't my friends. They were his. 2 weeks later, I broke up with him. At first, the group did the obligatory thing, sending a few sorry to hear that texts. But almost immediately, the distance grew. Invitations stopped coming. When I reached out, there was always some excuse. "Oh, it was last minute," or "It was just a small thing." Then I saw the Instagram posts. Trips, game nights, parties. All the same group, still intact, only now without me. And yes, Matthew was still there. That's when it finally clicked. They had never really been our friends. They had always been his. It's been a year since then, and I've built a whole new circle. Friends who ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. Friends who introduce me by name and don't feel the need to cut me down for a laugh. Friends who make me feel like I don't have to earn a spot at the table. Sometimes I come across photos of my old group, smiling together at some party or trip, and I expect to feel bitter. But I don't. What I feel instead is relief. Because losing people who were never truly on my side, that wasn't a loss. That was freedom. And freedom, I've learned, feels a lot like finally being seen.